Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. A lot of new faces. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Elizabeth Eisenberg. I am the new Executive Director here at JPAC. And I've only been here since about the end of October, so still getting to know everyone. Welcome to JPAC for lunch. Thank you for coming. We have Ron Brown and Jason Niles here, both representing Janesville Little Theatre. And Ron Brown also has a couple other things going on in his life that he'll tell you about. But we thought this was a good opportunity to give everyone a good history of Janesville Little Theatre because it's one of the longest running theater companies in the state of Wisconsin. So it's good for everyone to know that it's just in your backyard in Janesville. And also to kind of give you an idea of what's going to be happening at Dead Man's Hand, which is their upcoming show. And Ron Brown is the director of that show. Just to kind of plug some more events at JPAC coming up. This weekend we have Arts Fest. United Arts Alliance presents Arts Fest. It's free if you have kids, lots of kids activities. It's from 10 to 4 this Saturday. And arts and crafts, they'll have a lot of local art vendors. I'll be playing flute and some other local musicians. They're going to kind of take up this space here, and it's going to be a great family day of arts. And then in the evening, there will be the JAC Awards, which is Janesville's version of the Tonys, also presented by United Arts Alliance. So if you have any friends or family nominated for any of those awards, it's a great opportunity to see them. We have a lot of high schoolers up for nominations from the local high school musicals that recently happened, so it's good to see those folks as well and all of their friends. Also coming up, we have Dead Man's Hand, which they will tell you all about. There's a dinner special that Janesville Little Theatre is doing on the Saturday evening performance, and if you're interested in the dinner special, just let us know at the box office. We can let you know about that. And then at the end of the month, Janesville Presents brings in Pro Arte Quartet, and Pro Arte Quartet is a string quartet based out of UW-Madison. They're all on faculty at UW-Madison. They're local, obviously, and the quartet's been running for almost 100 years, obviously replacing members here and there. But they will be here Saturday, February 25th. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Mr. Ron Brown, Director of upcoming show Dead Man's Hand.
Before we get into the actual Dead Man's Hand portion of it, Jason Niles is with us. He's going to talk about the history of JLT and talk about a lot of the activities that they did prior to this weekend. So Jason, if you're here, you can take right over.
Thanks. Good afternoon. Thank you for attending our presentation of a history of Janesville Little Theatre. My name is Jason Niles, and I'm a third-generation member of Janesville Little Theatre. Now, anyone who's been involved in community theater in Rock County in the last 50 years is probably familiar with my grandfather back there, Chuck Niles. He's directed probably over 100 plays for JLT, Beloit Civic Theater, Broadhead High School, and several others. Served a few dozen terms on our board of directors, including more than a few as president. My father over there, also Chuck Niles, has been involved with JLT since he was a boy. He appeared in a few dozen productions, worked backstage, and directed our final play of last season, Murder at the Howard Johnsons. JLT has been a part of my life for about as long as I can remember. I started my involvement in JLT running around the old library theater and playing on the seats as a toddler. I eventually graduated to running sound and lights while I was in high school. I was away from JLT for many years due to college and career, and recently returned to Janesville with my own family. I've done technical work for the last few plays and am currently serving on our board of directors. So, in our 83rd season, JLT is the oldest community theater group in Wisconsin, and is possibly the third oldest in the nation. For many years, some thought we were the oldest in the nation, but the invention of the internet has made it a lot easier to disprove that legend. The title of America's oldest community theater belongs to the Footlight Club in Boston, which is a whopping 60 years older than JLT. Now, while we may not be the oldest, we do have the distinction of having operated continuously throughout our entire history. Most groups our age have gone dark at least once, but JLT never has. JLT also enjoys a strong record of its history and accomplishments. We have what we believe is a complete list of every single full-length play ever produced by JLT. Plus, we have at least one surviving artifact, which might be a program, photo, or newspaper article for each one of them. Dead Man's Hand will be the 309th major production of Janesville Little Theatre. And when we count our productions, we usually qualify them with the term major to refer to full-length plays. For each of its 83 years, JLT has produced a season of major productions. These seasons have varied from as few as 2 plays to as many as 8. In addition to major productions, JLT, especially in its early days, produced several one-act plays. One-act plays were, among other things, a way to develop new talent. New actors and new directors who did not have the confidence or experience to work on a full-length play would work on a one-act play. Many of these one-act plays were written by our own members, in keeping with JLT's mission of experimental theater. Several groups of young theater enthusiasts would get together, work on their plays with no particular deadline, and once enough of them were ready, the theater would schedule an evening of one-act plays. These productions often only ran for one night and were usually open only to members, so our records of them are pretty poor. We do know that some years, as many as a dozen one-act plays would be produced in addition to the season of major productions. To understand the origins of JLT, we have to first understand what a little theater is. In Victorian times, the predominant source of mass entertainment was the theater. And being a medium for the masses, the most popular productions were sensational melodramas. They were poorly written spectacles meant to appeal to a broad audience. After the turn of the 20th century, however, motion pictures rather than theater became the mass spectacle. So in 1912, the Little Theater movement began as an attempt to claim theater as the domain for high culture. Among the beliefs of the Little Theater movement were smaller venues, less commercialism, a need for character-driven plays with more realistic plot lines, community involvement in the selection and creation of plays, and a more substantial involvement of women in the production. Throughout this presentation, we'll see how Janesville Little Theatre has promoted these ideals throughout its history. So Janesville Little Theatre began in the summer of 1929 at the home of Mrs. H.S. Lovejoy. Malcolm Mount and Hiram Nolan, 2 Yale-educated lawyers, along with their wives and several friends, met to discuss forming their own little theater similar to those they had seen in New England. We know the names of about a dozen people who were at that first informal meeting. Many of them would go on to spend the rest of their lives building Janesville Little Theatre. We could spend an entire hour just talking about these founding members and their many contributions to this community. It's important to note at the very least that these founding members represented Janesville's social elite at a time when the city was very prosperous. They had a choice to either create an elite social group, which would have been much easier to organize and fund, or a civic group that was open to all. Wisely, they chose the latter. They called a public meeting to interest a diverse segment of the population and invited Professor William Troutman, an expert on theater organization at UW-Madison, to speak. Those at the public meeting decided that the key was an elected board of directors. They determined that each individual who purchased a season ticket would become a member of the theater, and that membership would elect 16 people with equal numbers of men and women to create a board of directors. Those 16 elected members would choose an additional 16 appointed members. This basic plan persists to this day, though the board is now smaller. The care with which JLT was originally organized probably contributed the most to its initial success, but there were other factors. Having started on the eve of the Great Depression, the people of Janesville had little money, but ample time. There was no shortage of volunteers to work long hours on theater productions, and the season ticket price of $1 meant cheap entertainment for the city. To get the theater started on a sound financial basis, Nolan and Mount were asked to solicit loans of $50 each from 10 local businessmen. They were so successful that they overshot their mark and collected $560 by that fall. While most of the businessmen who made these loans considered them more of a donation, they were all pretty surprised in 1934 when the theater had repaid the debts. Financial independence has been a core value of Janesville Little Theatre ever since. So the first full-length play ever produced by Janesville Little Theatre was The New Lady Bantock. It was staged in the spring of 1930, right here at Janesville High School. Unfortunately, we don't know very much about this production. We have one surviving picture, but we don't know anything about the cast or how the performance was received. We do know quite a bit, however, about our second production, Sir James Barrie's The Admirable Crichton. Sir James Barrie is better known as the author of Peter Pan. The Admirable Crichton was a very difficult English play with a large cast, elaborate costumes, and multiple sets. The play was very successful and left the group unafraid to tackle difficult and challenging material. In 1932, Janesville's first city manager, Henry Traxler, offered to create an auditorium on the second floor of the Janesville Public Library. The library auditorium would become our home for the next 50 years. It provided exactly the sort of setting that the group needed to flourish. The intimate size was well suited to amateur productions, plus the group had unlimited use of the space. This meant that rather than play for one night only to 1,000 people, the group could perform to smaller audiences over several nights. Extra performances meant more people were able to fit JLT into their schedule. The space could serve as meeting hall, performance hall, workshop, and their unlimited use of the facility also meant they could schedule performances on short notice. In the days before television, the group would often schedule one-act plays only a couple of days ahead of time, and sometimes right in the middle of the week. The first play presented at the library auditorium was William Shakespeare's Twelfth Night. This is the one and only time that JLT has ever performed Shakespeare. With a permanent home and a properly sized venue, the quality of Janesville Little Theatre productions improved dramatically. The sets were elaborate and detailed, and the plays were well rehearsed. Over the next several years, Janesville Little Theatre scored some of its highest critical successes. Janesville Little Theatre participated in the Wisconsin Dramatic Guild's annual Little Theatre Festival 5 times, winning 3 first-place awards and 2 second-place awards. And with nearly 1,800 members at a time when Janesville's population was less than 22,000, Janesville Little Theatre was, for a while, the largest community theater in the country relative to the size of the community. Janesville Little Theatre tried to spread these successes to other organizations by hosting several seminars on community theater. By the end of World War II, the little theater style was becoming the standard for all theaters and was going commercial. Many of the little theaters in larger cities turned professional, which meant that now community little theaters were competing with professional talent and professional resources. Many of the invention of television a little while later put further strain on the community. Many little theaters died out or went dark during this time. Janesville Little Theatre, on the other hand, seemed to flourish. The 1950s and 60s were among the most successful and productive years JLT has ever enjoyed. After an initial drop in season membership due to television, the theater quickly regained its appeal after the novelty of television wore off. Theater did have the distinct advantage of being in color. JLT also had the advantage of a number of very active families. A number of plays during this era would feature entire families and their casts, and you can see some pictures up here of my grandparents and my dad as a little boy. Women have always been an important part of JLT since its founding. Since the beginning, our Constitution has demanded that we elect equal number of men and women to our board every year. Women serve positions as officers on the very first board of directors. Women were committee heads and often outnumbered the men on committee memberships. Women directed plays and handled the business affairs of the theater regularly. And remember that the Little Theater movement started before women even had the right to vote in this country. Despite its rather progressive attitude towards the role of women, it was nearly 40 years before JLT elected its first woman president, Pat Shiro, in 1966. Today, women are more prominent than ever. Women make up the majority of committee heads, direct several plays, and fill a majority of positions on our board, including our current president, Susan McCumber. During the 1970s, JLT's fortunes began to change. By now, most of the founders were gone, and the public was becoming less and less interested in live theater. Plus, with so many other new and competing commitments, families were no longer able to devote the amount of time to community theater that they once had. These two trends continue to plague us to this day. Even though membership and attendance were declining, JLT managed to survive for 2 main reasons: experimentation and fiscal conservatism. JLT has been self-sufficient for most of its history, being funded entirely through ticket sales, with no major sponsors or patrons. Because this had been a source of pride for JLT for so many years, the board always sought to make sure that every year was profitable by making adjustments to their spending to compensate for fluctuating ticket sales. Most of the years, Janesville Little Theatre ended with a surplus, and 50 years of this sort of fiscal conservatism left JLT with quite a large savings account, which aided their experimentations. The large surplus meant that we could afford to experiment with new ideas freely because we could afford to be wrong once in a while. During this time, we experimented with theater in the round, dinner theater, traveling shows, and even the occasional musical production, which has always been a rarity at JLT. These experimentations and our healthy savings account would save us when our largest crisis ever came along. In the early 1980s, a couple of disastrous fires downtown prompted the city to actually start enforcing fire codes properly. Our beloved library auditorium would need substantial renovations to comply with these codes. Due to the enormous cost, the city was unwilling and JLT was unable to make the renovations necessary to comply with the new codes. JLT would have to either shut down or move. So we moved. After a few years of performances at schools, malls, and churches, the group eventually found a new home in, of all places, the cafeteria at Can-Do Industries, and an unlikely partnership with an upstart caterer that led to a completely new way of doing business, dinner theater. While we never regained our lost membership of the 70s, the dinner theater was wildly successful and highly profitable. Because we now had to be able to move our entire set, lighting, and costumes in and out of our venue in a single day, those things all became much simpler. More and more, we had to rely on good acting for our quality productions. JLT seemed to thrive on that challenge, and in no time at all, JLT was again producing high-quality productions and growing its savings account. By 1996, that account had grown to the point where we were ready to buy rather than rent a workshop. At the same time, the city was shutting down the fire station on Racine Street and offered it to Janesville Little Theatre at a very low price. Unfortunately, around that same time, our dinner theater arrangement was starting to unravel. The upstart caterer of 10 years prior was now extremely successful and more interested in serving the more lucrative clients who didn't consume their facilities for 2 weeks at a time. The quality of the food had started to decline, and JLT was often unable to secure enough dates to produce its entire season. We often had to move shows to different venues, which became very confusing for our audience. By 2004, that situation had become untenable. Fortunately, by then, JPAC had opened and offered us an interesting new opportunity to bring our productions back here, right where they had started 75 years earlier. But with one big problem. The purchase of our workshop and an unexpected major repair bill for its roof had destroyed JLT's savings and even left us with a large debt. Membership was at an all-time low, and JPAC was much more expensive than our previous venues. Again, JLT made adjustments, reducing our show runs from 2 weeks to 1 and implementing tight spending controls on our productions allowed us to return our plays to profitability, but at a price. Our extremely limited production budget has caused a noticeable decline in our production quality, which we're trying very hard to correct. The future of JLT remains somewhat uncertain. While our plays are once again profitable, those profits are not sufficient to cover the cost of maintaining our workshop. Utilities, insurance, and building repairs are more than our play profits can sustain. So for the first time in our history, we've come to rely on fundraising to close the budget gaps. And since we have such limited experience in that area, we're not very good at it yet. While we desperately need donations to rise out of our current predicament, we're very careful not to become dependent on them. Financial and artistic independence have been central values of JLT for its entire history, and coming to rely on patrons is a sure way to destroy both. We believe that the best way for us to restore our formal financial security is through the work we do and the service we provide. We're looking for new and creative ways to improve our production quality without adding costs. We're trying to recruit more young people into the group to harness their creativity and energy, and we're trying to attract a larger audience through more diverse play selections. We're also making plans to expand our season to 4 or even more productions per year. We hope these things will allow us to continue to serve the community, to continue to experiment, and to continue adding chapters to our long history. Thank you for listening to and being a part of the history of Janesville Little Theatre. I think we'll let Ron speak, and then we'll both take questions at the end.
Thanks, Jason. As Elizabeth said earlier, I'm Ron Brown. I'm the director for Dead Man's Hand, and it's a wonderful little play that is written in the style of Agatha Christie, who I think is one of the best murder mystery writers ever. I love her shows. I love the style she writes. And when they approached me to direct this show, I had never heard of Dead Man's Hand, which I'm sure many of you never have either. The first thing that came to mind when I heard Dead Man's Hand, probably like most of you, Wild Bill Hickok. Dead Man's Hand is a poker game. Not even close. This is a story about two couples that are invited to an Italian villa. They're lured there by a mysterious businessman. And suddenly they're being murdered, one by one. Now, what do they have in common with the murderer? Who is the murderer? These are things you're going to have to come to see the show to find out. And expect the unexpected. Just when you think you know what's happening, what's going on, it's not even close. You know, when we had auditions for this show, I knew if I got the right people, we would have a special show. And the turnout we had for auditions, I was thrilled. Unfortunately, being the director, you're forced to some very tough decisions. I had 6 women for 3 roles. And I kept changing them, moving them to different positions and saying, well, I can use this one, this one, this one. Okay, then I can use this one. You know. So you kept juggling people. And I came up with what I think is a wonderful cast. In fact, one of our ladies are here, Pat Hall. She's, I consider one of the best character actresses in the area. She's wonderful. In this show, she shines.
I paid him to say that.
Not enough, though. I expect a check tonight. And same thing with the men. Again, 3 men. The show's 3 men, 3 women. I had 3 men I had to choose from, and I had 7 men to choose from. And again, the same problem. And it's like juggling. And who looks good with you? Because they have to be both married couples. So I couldn't use somebody 50 with a girl 24. Wouldn't work. They may think it would work, but it doesn't work. So we had to make them look like married couples, and then make sure they all look well together. And the cast I ended up with is wonderful. As I said, we've got Pat, Susan McCumber, who's a veteran of the local theaters, a brand new girl to the area by the name of Amberlynn Kennedy. She just moved here from South Dakota. Very talented young lady. For the men, we've got Tom McDermott. And I believe this is Tom's first non-musical. He was in Fiddler on the Roof with T.Y., also Lame. And like I said, I believe this is his first non-musical role, and he's doing very well. Bob Coleman, who's a veteran of theater here in Janesville, also Beloit in the area. And Aaron Williams, who's our final cast member. And I couldn't ask for a better cast. They're working so hard on this show. They're doing so well. The thing to remember, it's not just the actors on the stage that you'll be seeing, or that's all you'll be seeing, but there's so many more people involved in the show that people just don't realize. You know, you've got the lighting people, the sound people, makeup, costumes, marketing, and just on, the list goes on and on. People that take care of the concessions. You know, so just if you want to volunteer for JLT, it's not just actors. We need backstage people. We need prop people. We need people to help build sets, to move the set from the workshop here and help put it up. You have to paint the set. So it takes many, many hands to make a quality theater production. And I think that sometimes the audience sees the actors and they get the applause, but there's so many more people involved. And you know, a lot of people also think when we do a show, you just come in, the actors are there, oh, they've only been together a week or 2. Oh, no. We've been rehearsing for 6 weeks now. They have to learn all the lines. They have to learn the blocking. They have to learn where to stand and you know, how to interpret the script in different orders, you know, different ways. So it's quite a time commitment. And I don't think a lot of people realize the time, you know, involved. Rehearsals are 2 to 3 hours a night, and we rehearse Monday through Thursdays. This week we'll be rehearsing through Friday. We'll be here on Sunday all day. We'll put up the set and then work the technical aspects of the show. And then next week we're here every night. running the show completely. So by the time you come on Thursday night to see the show, or Friday or Saturday, we've put in hundreds of hours. Like I said, we've got such a great cast and such a good group. I think the reason they approached me to direct this show is because of my work with a group called Chicken Boy Productions, which we specialize in murder mystery dinner theaters. Now, directing a show like this is an entirely different challenge. With the murder mystery dinner theaters, it's a very intimate setting. You are in the audience. You're sitting at the table with people, talking with them, giving them clues. The action takes place right amongst everybody. With this type of a show, obviously you're on the stage. So the actors have to portray all the clues, all the emotion, everything from the stage out to you. And you don't have the opportunity to say, wait a minute, didn't I see you with that girl, and weren't you arguing about something? Because in the murder mysteries dinner theater, you can do that. In this show, you can't, in the middle of the show, say, wait a minute, I got a question. It doesn't work. You can't do that. Even though you may want to, you may say, wait a minute, yeah, you're not allowed that. So this is an entirely different challenge for the actors in order to get that emotion across, to sell the clues, to give the hints of the show, to set things up, and yet not give away too much. Because after all, this is a thriller. And this is your traditional thriller. There are some comedic parts in it, but for the most part, it's your standard thriller. And by the time you come to the conclusion of the show at the end, audiences will be on the edge of their seats. And there is, very unexpected plot twists throughout the show. Just when you think you've got it figured out. I know who did it. You don't. So that's what's always fun about doing these shows like this. Other than that, when you work with a cast like this, it's enjoyable to watch them grow in their characters. Because when they first get a script, basically they're just reading the lines, and they don't understand what the lines are saying. And that's part of my job, to help them interpret and try to coach them along. And every now and then they'll come up with a different suggestion. And when I direct a show, I like actors that will ask and say, well, Ron, when I read this, this is what I'm thinking. And we'll try it. We'll say, well, let's give this a shot and see how it plays. A lot of times, it's like, no, this is what's happening, and you'll say, this is what it's got to be. But I love actors that will ask questions and not necessarily challenge me or challenge what I'm trying to do, but at least give a different perspective of it. And that shows that they're growing in their character. If an actor will say to me, I don't think my character would do this. And I'd say, okay, tell me why. Is it because, like Mike, you're not comfortable doing this? Why? Because Mike, the actor's not comfortable doing it, or because your character wouldn't be comfortable doing it? And that's all a matter of understanding your character. If you know who the character is, a lot of times with a new cast especially, I ask them to write a little bio about their character. Because in order to play somebody, you have to know who they are. You have to know what their home life is like, what they're like growing up, what their favorite colors are, just different things. In order to really play somebody, you have to know who that character is. And if they say, well, the book says, I say, well, I don't care what the book says. What do you know about the character? Are they married? Are they single? Are they divorced? What was their home life like? Are parents still alive? Are they dead? What type of life did they have growing up? These are all things that develop a person into the person they are. Well, it's the same with the character. In order to play the character, you have to know the whole background of what that person was like up to this point in time during the show. And a lot of that's just character development. And it takes time. It's not something you can learn overnight. That's why I chuckle at one of the lines in this show where the characters talks about being in a play. And they said, don't you know what it means? She says, I just say lines. I have time. I don't know what they mean. That doesn't work. You've got to know what's happening, what's going on, what is leading you to this point. And the other thing with the shows too, each little scene needs conflict. You're both trying to get to a certain point, and it's the struggle between the two actors to get to this point. And it's not something that, author says, move 3 steps left. No. No, there's no reason to. Move with a purpose. If you feel your character will take these steps, okay. Just because the script says, well, you're supposed to blink your eyes twice, turn left, and sit down. Well, no. If you wouldn't do that in real life, you wouldn't do it on stage. That's what I try to explain to them too. Make the characters believable. That's the greatest compliment you can give any actor is, I believe you were that person. Because that's what theater is. It's fantasy, it's make-believe, it's fun, but in order for the audience to really enjoy it, they have to believe what is happening on that stage. They have to become a part of it. You're basically sitting off to the side watching, looking through a big window, watching somebody's life unfold. And so you need to believe that these characters are real people, that they're really doing this scene, that this is really happening. And if you can go up to an actor after a show and say, wow, I really believe you were that person, that's great. That's the best compliment you can give to anybody. I know when I did Sound of Music a number of years ago for TUI, I played the, as I call it, the nasty Nazi. At curtain call, I got booed. I loved it. They hated me. And I'm going, that's fantastic. They believed I was this nasty SOB. Great. That was the best compliment anybody could have given me for that show. They absolutely hate it. Yes, Chuck. They hate me all the time. And I saw that, Pat. I saw that.
He started.
See, this is what I have to deal with at rehearsals too. and we do have fun at rehearsals. It's not all work. Don't get the wrong idea with that. And every now and then we'll get a case of the giggles, and something will happen, and we'll start chuckling. Somebody will mispronounce a word, and they'll be corrected. And it's funny the way they're corrected. Because it's just, Pat knows what word I'm talking about. But yeah, it's just so much fun, and we just really enjoy ourselves. So even though it's a lot of work and we do take it seriously, this is fun. And that's why we do it. If it wasn't fun, I know I wouldn't do it. And I take my theater very serious, but I'm also the first one to get a little playful at times. Especially during rehearsals.
That's why they call it a play.
That's right.
Otherwise they call it work.
You've got that right. And what's nice about this too is everybody needs some type of release in their life. Whether it's acting in plays, playing golf, playing cards, going bowling. You all need something to just after work just to unwind, to have fun, to let loose, to do different things. And that's what I like about the theater. You get to be things and do places and whatever that you never will have the opportunity to do in your real life. I've played murderers, I've played sailors, I've played generals, I've played judges. These are things that I've never had the opportunity to do. But in the theater life, you get to be anything, be anybody, go anywhere. It's just a really nice outlet for a lot of people. So other than that, that's basically everything about the show itself. As Elizabeth mentioned, there is a dinner on the 18th, and it's only $16. And the reservation that we make on the 15th, and it's going to be a great menu. They're having meat lasagna, Sicilian chicken, tiramisu cups, Caesar salad, tossed salad, Italian rice. It's going to be a great meal, so we're looking forward to that. At this time, if you have some questions, we'd love to answer, whether it's about the theater itself, whether it's about JLT, if there's anything that you would like to know. Oh, come on, you're not all that shy. Mike?
Do you think it's kind of hard to figure out why sometimes people have problems with language in plays versus topics in plays? People don't seem to have much problem with murders or murder mysteries, with the, not necessarily violence on the stage, but the illusion of violence or the suggestion of violence. Whereas sometimes, a few words and people will walk out. Do you have any feel for that? Do you think it's just our society?
I think that's a lot of it.
Acceptable?
I know a lot of people, when they do a show, they cut language. I'm not one to do that. I figure the author wrote this show a certain way for a reason. And again, this is real life. Granted, people are coming here to be entertained, and I understand that. But know what you're coming to see. I know for the last JLT show, live on the 23rd floor, people had a lot of problems with the language. Well,
And, the publishers apparently expect that too, because our royalty contract for that play came with a special added extra page that said you will not change the language of this play.
So, and again, people have to realize this is real life. If you go somewhere and there's a conflict or something happening, people aren't going to say, "Oh, shucky darns, doggone it, Chipperkey Willard." No, they're going to come out with blue language, and it's just, and it is a little bit of shock value, but it's life.
Why do you think that is, though, that people are accepting? I mean, the murder mystery genre seems to be pretty popular,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that whole titillation with murder, maybe we read it every day in the newspapers, and maybe we're, a little obsessed with it, I don't know. But it seems like we accept that as the contrivance in a play or the plot in a play, but yet some other things we don't really want to touch. You have a feel for that after having done the murder? What do you think the draw is in your murder mystery theater or your dinners?
Well, the draw is with a lot of it.
A puzzle?
It's the puzzlement. It's the thrill of being involved with something that's really taboo. People want to be excited. They want to be thrilled. They want to figure out.
So they want to
who
catch
did
the
it.
person.
They want to catch the person. They want
So
to
it's
figure
really
out.
prey drive, like in dogs.
Yeah.
It's catching them. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They want to find out who did this and why. And we got to catch this person.
Yeah.
And who killed this person? Why did they do it? Are they a serial killer? Are they stark raving mad, or is there underlying reasons? Was this person having embezzling of money? Was they having an affair? Or did this one try to backstab this? There's so many different reasons.
But you think the puzzle is the biggest?
I think that is. I really do. I think that's the reason people go. They want to figure out. They want to try to catch the person. And not all murder mysteries either are very serious thrillers. Like the ones we do for Chicken Boy, they are comedic murder mysteries. I mean, you can put a lot of humor into a murder if you want. And with our productions for Chicken Boy, we do. It's comedy. Granted, there's still murder, and it's you still have to figure it out. But leading up to it, there's a lot of action going on to get people. Because people want to be entertained still. And there's two different ways to do it. You can thrill them, excite them, scare them, terrify them, or you can get them laughing, enjoying it, and all of a sudden the murder happens. They go, "Wait a minute, what just happened?"
And of course, just to clarify, no chickens are ever harmed in any of your productions.
Never. We have never heard any chickens yet in Chicken Boy.
You talk about Chicken Boy, Ron. What have you got on tap for that? You have some.
We've got a show coming up April 21st and 28th in Cambridge at the Keystone Grill. It's going to be a fundraiser for Family Promise in Jefferson County, which is a group that helps the homeless. They approached us and asked us if we would do something for them. And we've done 4 shows so far that we've written and produced ourselves. I work with Scott Kaczynski and Jeannie Thomas, and we write our own shows.
Have you done any around Janesville here? Or have they been
Milton, we
Cambridge?
did one last year,
Okay.
and we're trying to find a venue in the area. With the murder mysteries like that, it's a more intimate setting, so it would not play well on a stage. It plays, you play right in the audience itself. You have the tables, like during the dinner, the characters will sit right at the table with the people and talk about, well, you know what so-and-so did, and so you have all these intrigues. They're mingling with the people before the show at the cocktail hour, walking around talking to people and setting up a lot of the action.
How do you identify your cast, and are they in costume, or how do the people know who's cast and who's
They don't.
attendees? Okay.
They don't. That's the fun part about it.
Yeah.
Until something happens, they can usually pretty much figure it out, especially if it's more of a period piece.
Yeah.
We did a show, Take Off on Christmas Carol last year, where there were more period pieces, so they could tell who the audience was, who the cast members were. The last couple of shows, they didn't know. In fact, when my daughter made her acting debut in the last one, and she was just a witch, just mean, rotten to everybody. And somebody comes to me later and said, "Who's that girl? She's being so, it's a word, but she was not being very friendly." And I said, "Oh, that's my daughter." And we explained to them, her mother did this, her mother did that. And then they realized, oh, she's part of the show. You know, they didn't realize until the show actually got rolling that she was actually a cast member. They just thought she was some woman over there just bitching and complaining about everything that was going on.
So you usually don't have programs or anything with that?
Well, we do have programs, but if they don't know who like if you were to come to one of our shows and you don't know who Jeannie Thomas is, and you
don't
just
have
see
a
something,
picture
right,
on the program or anything.
yeah, because there's no pictures, and there's just the names in there, and it's just, we don't have bios in them, so it's just names. So they say, this is our cast members.
Have you directed other murder mysteries, a standard play type murder
Not
mystery?
standards, no. I've directed 2 of the Chicken Boy shows.
Okay.
This is my first murder mystery directing with.
For Jason, how many do you think on average there, or percentage-wise, have been murder mysteries in Janesville Little Theater's history? Would you have a guess? So a pretty sizable number over the years. Huh?
Lately, they started to 1 year.
Yeah.
At the college. There was a good stretch of years where it was just light comedy after light comedy because that is the most popular. So
Yeah.
lately, we're trying to do a little more.
Yeah, and that's what's fun about it, by giving different options and showing different shows, whether it's like comedies, dramas, murder mysteries. It gives the audiences a good variety of the theater. And what's also nice about this, before I came here, I just did the WCLO radio show. We got talking about theater in Janesville. And what we're trying to get across to people is that you don't need to go to Madison, Milwaukee, Chicago to see quality theater. We've got quality theater right here in this building. Between Janesville Theater, Theater Unlimited, Stage 1 just had 2 wonderful productions that they did with The Rabbit Hole and Proof. You know, the talent in this area is amazing. And unfortunately, I'm preaching to the choir here because you all have come to JPAC. You know what we've got here. But there's so many people in this town that have never been in this building. And we're trying to spread that word that you don't need to go out of town to see good theater. You know, when you go to the high school shows and they are getting 600 people a night to see a show, but they won't come here because there's no quality theater. Where do you think the kids that graduate from high school continue acting? They're now acting with JLT, TUI, Bower City, Stage 1, Spotlight on Kids. So the talent is still here. And we just need to spread that word out to people that quality theater in Janesville, yes, come here. We've got it. And there's many opportunities for everyone to perform here. Are we running out of time?
Well, I just kind of wanted to put in a plug on
Oh,
that.
plug away.
So Ron brought up that there's many people around this area that have some really quality talent in this area. And I want to say the next JPAC Your Lunch next March, well, this coming March, will feature a gentleman from East Troy. And he is so excited to be here. He is a puppeteer and ventriloquist. And Avenue Q is coming up with Bower City. And he has his own puppet design studio where he actually makes puppets and sends them out on national tours. So if you ever see a national Broadway tour of a puppet show, that's some of his puppets in that show. And he just happens to be from the area and is going to be here in March for JPAC Your Lunch and is very excited about being here. His design studio is called LaFonsi Designs, and his name is Larry LaFonsi. And he's going to bring with some of his puppets and demonstrate some ventriloquism. And I believe he's actually even going to work with the cast of Avenue Q coming up. So it's something you'll definitely want to be here for. So I just wanted to second Ron's approach of saying there are quality talent in this area, and there are people outside of Janesville that do national Broadway tours and have affiliations with national musical acts even. And so it's a great opportunity, and especially these events are free. So I hope you tell all your friends about the next JPAC Your Lunch in March. He's going to be absolutely fantastic. So I'll let Ron wrap up. It was great having you all here. Thank you so much. I hope you can all come to Janesville Little Theater show Dead Man's Hand with Ron Brown directing. And if you want any more information on upcoming events at JPAC, there's blue sheets over there, as well as some Dead Man's Hand posters out in the lobby. If you're interested in dates or want to know more about the dinner, you can just call the box office.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, the show opens up, as I said, the Thursday the 16th, and that is a pay what you can evening. So if you've only got $3 that you can afford to come to the show, that's fine. So whatever you can afford to pay that night. It's a good opportunity for people to be introduced to the theater, for families to come as a group and to see the show. Other than that, Friday and Saturday shows are at 7:30. Cost is $12 for adults, $6 for students in advance. If you buy your tickets at the door, it's $14.08. And there's a Sunday matinee at 2 o'clock. And again, the tickets are 12 and 6 in advance or 14 and 8 at the door. Other than that, that's all I have for you. Thank you very much for listening today. If there's any other questions, Jason, do you have anything else to add or any questions for Jason regarding JLT? Definitely come see Dead Man's Hand, and thank you all very much. Elizabeth, thank you for the opportunity to talk to everyone.
If anyone's interested in being a JPAC usher, we're doing usher training next week, a week from today, Wednesday at 5:30. So if you're interested in being an usher at JPAC, just come on down in 1 week, 5:30. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.